I've started on the GLOSTER JAVELIN 148 from AIRFIX. I'm just doing like preparation work to start with, getting halves, like intake trunking halves, sorting all that out, weapons. So I'm putting 4 rockets on it. You can do drop tanks or the rockets. I've looked up a heap of images of the JAVELIN way back when it was in service, and a lot of the images I found it had 4 rockets on, and it does have 2 big belly tanks anyway. So they were 2 halves, and then you put in 2 fins, and I'm not sure why, but it matters which side the fins go. The slot in the rocket body is different sizes, so there's 4 fins on one sprue, and then there's 4 fins on another sprue, and they matter where they position on the body. Like I said, I don't know why they've done that. I've got to put the rails on the rockets yet. I've got to clean up the seam line first before I do that. And the seeker heads, well, maybe not, I'm not sure if they were seekers back then, but the heads anyway are clear parts, but they're painted black, so it doesn't matter. I don't have to mask them. You got intake trunking, so that's the front and that's the rear, but before I glue them together there's a whole heap of ejection pins marks in there. I'll sand them out. I'm not sure when it's on how far in you'll see. I mean, you can see in there, but once it's all in the model and everything's painted, how visible all this will be. But I'm going to clean them up, and when I glue them, then I'm going to have to do the seam join and clean that up. Then I'll use Tamiya white putty for those. These are the ailerons off the main wing, off the right side. Yeah, right side. They did. You can see there's a like a rod that fits into a groove on the other part. It didn't fit. I use this is like a, I think it's like a 1.5 mil or something chisel to groove it out some more so it would fit, because it was wouldn't meet up properly. Or the other option is to sand down that rod. That's just the rod's there to you can pose it in the wing. I've got the tail halves, the main part. They didn't fit here. There's still a problem there I've got to clean up. The pins are too big for the holes, and I've got a drill bit and drill them out so they'll fit better. The horizontal stabilizer at the top of the tail, again this is just the one side. So you got the bits that'll fit into the vertical stabilizer. Again, they sit in, but again this didn't fit properly on here, so I've sanded or filed the holes out a bit to make it fit. And where it fits here, so that part, it was too thick. It wasn't flush, so I've Let's use the blade and just scraped out a bit, or you can sand it with however you want to do it, just to get it flush. The rudder is glued together. That fitted all right. I've started with one of the wings, so I've put in the, you put in the gear bay and you put in 2 parts into that. I'm going to paint that before I glue the top wing on, because you can't, once that goes on, there's a big section that you can't get at properly, so I'll just paint that before, make it easier. These like a dive brake or a speed brake. You have option to have them deployed or retracted. They show you in the instructions. All the images I can find where it's parked on the ground, they're retracted, so even though it'd be a nice touch to see them up, I've kept them retracted. However, the main speed brake, I'm probably going to have them deployed on the upper wing, just to add interest to the look of the model on display, even though they wouldn't have been deployed on the ground. But sometimes you just want to use the options that are available in a kit to add some more interest to it, showing how the aircraft parts can be positioned and whatnot. Yeah, so that's where I'm at the moment. And also with the trunking for the intake, they've stamped them, so you got starboard and the other one's port, which is good, so you can put them all together. And if you, when I do left and right, so I put them, I got a separate spot for them, so I know. But in this case, it doesn't matter, because you look, oh yeah, that's starboard. So that's a bit of a nice touch. In the last video, I talked about cleaning up the intakes. I've had a change of heart as to how I'm going to do it. This kit, you get FOD covers. So you get the you get intake FOD covers and the engine FOD covers. So I'm going to go that way. It's going to save me at least 2 hours of sanding and cleaning up intakes, and you're not really seeing much anyway, especially the rear ones. Even if the covers are off, if you look inside, they're that long, it'll be too dark. So I'm going to go that way. And it also, the FOD covers will be red. I haven't checked, but I imagine, but it'll add a bit of interest to the look of the aircraft as well. So I've started getting cockpit section together. Cockpit, this era is black of aircraft back in the 50s. So I've just put it all together, and I'll spray it in, and we've got decals for the front instrument panel, and it looks like there's just one that goes on the rear. The rest I'll dry brush it to highlight the switches. I've created some angles there, but I should be able to get at it with the airbrush. This cockpit has a inner wall for the tub that fits in, and then you have your outer this fuselage. It'll plug in, so this part plugs into there like so, in theory anyway. I'll see when I get there. I started the seats, injection seats. So there's several parts to each one. What I'm going to do is, they don't come with harnesses, and as it's just an outer box build, I'm going to use this. It's aluminium foil, and it's a tape. So I just fold it over itself. I made a mess of that. It doesn't matter, because all those crinkles just adds to the effect of the harness. And I just use a ruler. Where's my ruler? Not here. I use a metal ruler, just lie it on the bench and cut. Oh, there it is. And just I'll cut away that excess. Make it level again. And then you just cut the thickness you want. And then cut them again to length, and then just put it in. It's a cheap way of doing the harnesses if you don't want to use aftermarket, and it's obviously not as good as aftermarket harnesses, because I don't put in the little joins and that on them. I just paint them in like that. But if you wanted to, you could get some lead wire and create the hooks and that the seat belts go through. But for the scale, it's just good enough for me, let's say that. I'm going to point out your wings before you glue them together. Need to just give these, you got ejection pins, and they got a bit of a raised lip on them. Just give them a sand back. That one might need more because it's actually raised. The other wing I glued was recessed. This one's pronounced, so I have to sand that back more. Otherwise, when you put the wing together, that's not going to fit. You can see you got a gap, so you need to take care of that before you glue it in. Finished cleaning up the rockets, and I've put the rails on, so they're ready for priming and painting. So next up I'll be painting the cockpit tub, and I'll do the harnesses and put them on, paint the seats up as well. Oh, a bit more progress. So the wings are glued together, the flaps or the ailerons are in. I've flattened out the area where I mentioned with the ejection pins, but I'm still going to need to putty the trailing edge because you can see a gap. And I'll have to clean up the edges. But what I like about the soft AIRFIX plastic is that when you do put parts like this together, It's usually, because it's soft, it gets a good fit together, and even though it squishes out a bit, that I find that better for sanding up. And I usually find that I'm not left with, occasionally, but not left with many gaps to fill with this type of plastic. I know it's some people don't like it. Some prefer the hard plastic, and just the style of the kit, I suppose, what they use. That's the bottom of the fuselage. I just cut them off the sprue, and I had to drill some holes. They're 1 millimeter holes. The top of the fuselage has got a 1 millimeter hole and a 1.4 millimeter hole. I did them now so I don't forget, which I'm inclined to do on builds. So that's just still mainly preparation work. I'm getting it all sorted and it'll go together quickly, hopefully. I've painted the cockpit tub up. Like I mentioned, I created angles, but I got at it all right. I have to give it a gloss coat, clear coat yet. Then I'll dry brush the instrument panels and give it a wash. This is one of that's the port side tub wall, and one of the seats, ejection seats. If you can see I got to paint it in yet, so but you can see the harnesses there. It's, like I said, it's a bit crude, but it's better than nothing, and it's cheaper than buying yourself aftermarket harnesses. I've got to paint the cushion and the harnesses and the ejection pull rings. The seam where it's joined at the back, you do not need to clean it up, same as down the front. When it goes into the tub, none of that will be seen, same as the rear one, you will not see it. So if you want to save a bit of time, you don't need to clean that up. The tail fin stabilizer, so those two parts that are glued together, and the rudder, I've glued the rudder in that it's neutral. It's too chunky to pose, I believe, and you need to clean up seams inside that. So that those two pieces go together. You got to put the rudder in, glue them together, then you put this piece on top, and then this piece goes on top, which is the top of your fin, but you got to put in the horizontal stabilizers. They're a bit they're not a real flush fit, so to speak. When you put this on, it's going to need some maneuvering, and I'm not sure about if there's going to be a lip or it's going to be a flush fit. I think how I'm going to tackle this is I'm going to glue the front section on, and I can lift it at the back just a touch to get these sides in, and I can have a better look at how this is going to fit. Might be the way to go. And I've still got to clean up the leading edge. So that is where I'm at the moment.